All right. Last time we talked about technology, but we talked about it very much at a high level. We talked about data privacy laws, the differences in data privacy laws across the US, difficulties of dealing with international agreements when you're dealing with GDPR and so forth. So what I wanted to focus on today is still technology, but more of the day-to-day side. So I want to focus more, and this applies. It doesn't matter whether you're a corporate attorney or a working in a law firm or even working in a government office. Obviously, technology is impacting everybody in the legal industry these days. And so there's decisions about what technology do we use? How do we use it? How do we put guardrails around it so that we keep both ourselves and our clients protected? Um, so I'm not really looking to talk about specific software tools as much as I am the process. How do you decide what to use? And I'll give an example to start things off. I'm working with a client now. I met with them a couple of months ago, or sorry, a couple of weeks ago, and uh, one of the things they said is this was their managing partner said, well, we have a very well-known legal software management software that we use, and it's available to everybody in our company, and it does all these cool things. And I'm in this meeting with several of the partners, and one of the partners, who happened to be from Dallas, said, well, yeah, I didn't know it did that. So this is kind of what I'm trying to get at. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to go out and get this brand new technology, and it's going to save us time and make us more efficient and more effective, et cetera, et cetera. But there's another part to it, is how do we implement that? How do we make sure that the people that we're saying, okay, now we have this software, that they know how to run it? They know what it does, and so that everybody in the organization is working from a common playbook. So, Eric, I'm sure you've run into this. Sophie, I'm sure you've run into this, but that's kind of where I want to start today, is not at the very high level, but more day to day. How do you use this stuff?
Right? That's always a big question. You get a new technology, and how do you make sure that you go out and do evangelization and make sure the organization knows this is what we have, this is what we plan to use it for, and then get that feedback to say, okay, great, you asked us to do task A, but I also found it really useful for B and C, right?
Right,
And then be able to organically return that to the organization and share that knowledge, right? So there are kind of two ways to do that. You can either do top down or you can do bottom up, right? It's either a grassroots, you kind of one guy goes and finds it and then spreads it out and goes, hey, this is this great tool that'll do this. Or you got something pushed down from the top where the CEO says, that's it. We picked tool X and we're going to roll with it and everyone's going to use it. Those tend to work a little bit better from the support perspective, right? Because the CEOs tend to think through and go, all right, what kind of training do I make sure my people have? What do they need to know to be able to use it? What are the guardrails that we have to put on?
right,
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they establish a governance board that really helps with that to be able to get representation from all the different departments. That's usually the best thing to do. Establish a center of excellence, be able to use that to carry forward and kind of shine the light for everyone else to follow the path.
Yeah, yeah, you are right, Joel. It's very tough, but when you talk about AI in legal practice, I think it's important to separate hype from reality. And right now, we finally have actual numbers, not just predictions. As far as I know, according to Thomson Reuters 2025 data, 77% 58% of legal professionals use AI for document review, 74% for research, and almost 60% for drafting. Those are the exact tasks that used to make up the foundational training layer for junior lawyers. AI is now delivering a meaningful portion of that labor. And the question is not that the AI changed the lawyer, it changed the work just. It does not replace lawyers. AI replaces legal labor, repetitive law complexity works that trained lawyers for decades. And so the guarantees and insurances and framework how to use AI in our internal business, it's very important.
Yes, and just some observations that I have, going back to what you were talking about, Eric. With larger firms, I agree. Let's talk about large law firms, for example. They are more likely to be top-down driven. They are more likely, they were earlier adopters of AI than the small and mid-sized law firms. And they're more likely to have set up kind of a structure. They're more likely to have an internal training program for a lot of things, not just for the AI. So, but if we're talking about smaller and mid-sized law firms, one of the things, and it's one of the things that I work with them on, they often don't have training programs. They're not used to, in other words, they're more likely to roll stuff out and just say, well, go learn it by osmosis, which is not effective, as witnessed the law firm that I was talking about earlier. I also very much agree with what you said about the need for a governance board or some type of structure within the law firm that oversees how this stuff is being used, kind of looks at these are the guardrails we're going to put on it and so forth. But at least my experience, I find that to be a bit more of a struggle with, let's say, mid-sized law firms. The larger firms probably have it. Mid-sized law firms often don't have that structure. So I'm wondering, have you seen that at all? Have you seen any effective ways that, say, mid-sized law firms or mid-sized organizations in general have been able to implement something like that?
So the size of the organization is definitely going to come into play. With the smaller shops, you go more organic, right? You have to do that grassroots kind of. I found something. Let me make sure I have information sessions. Let me do brown bag lunch sessions and kind of show what I'm doing with the tool, right? So that other people are aware, okay, there's this thing, we're going to be able to use it. It's AI. I want to be able to use it to do my first draft of a document. And then I have to go and meticulously check every single citation it gave me.
Right.
There are the dangers that are involved with that. And a whole bunch of bar associations have seen that. A whole bunch of different courts have said, nope, if you're going to use it, here you have to add in an attestation that you have double checked every single source that was cited, right? Which is reasonable. As an attorney, that's part of what you're supposed to be doing. But it also saves you that the digging work, right? The grunt work to be able to go and find everything. And now you're just checking and drafting
Right.
and revising and editing.
It's absolutely here. Um, and let me say that I am very much in favor of technology. One of the things that I talk to smaller law firms about is you do need to be using it. There's just so much that it can do as far as efficiency and effectiveness and uh, streamlining your workflows and so forth. You do need to be using it. The danger, I think, and this is something that Sophie alluded to, is you can't necessarily plug it in and simply say, okay, now we have this tool, so everything's going to work just like it did before, just faster. It's not. You need to think about workflows. You know, in the past, maybe you did a certain amount of work and you gave it to the paralegal. Well, now maybe the paralegal's doing some of that and giving it to AI, or you're giving it to AI and then to the paralegal. Uh, so the workflows change or should, and that's part of the implementation process that I think a lot of firms are struggling with. Sophie, on your side, from a corporate counsel or a corporation standpoint, what sort of challenges do you see with implementing new technology?
Yes, yes, well, I should admit that AI, AI is efficiency, but efficiency only matters if it's safe, right? So, uh, risk and compliance is very important to be protected, privilege, privacy, approval tiers, and audit trails. AI does not eliminate legal risk. It changes the location of risk, I would say. Without clear frameworks for what can be uploaded versus what must never be uploaded, we should decide in terms of corporational contest. So, as you already mentioned, hallucination is not also just a technical problem inside corporational contests, and they are a governance failure. For example, when we also mentioned that when we search or draft or are doing searching, we should recheck this, and audit trails are so essential. So, and also on the other hand, you have clients, and client expectations also are very important. Uh, they are actively asking how we use AI, how we protect their data, and whether our processes are efficient. I would say that regulators must tighten obligations around privacy, cybersecurity, and professional responsibility. We need guidance from regulators and to be compliant with law.
Well, I agree. And Eric, you're probably more familiar with this than I am, but I've seen, uh, and I'm speaking now at the federal level, I've seen a couple of uh, half-hearted attempts to address the regulatory side of technology in general and AI in particular. I'm not aware of anything that's out there right now that's even in the process as far as a standardized regulatory framework. Are you, Eric?
Not at the federal level. There's NIST guidance, which is kind of the best that you have. How do you be able to secure AI? That's more about the security. It's not so much down to the detail of what do lawyers have to do to keep documents separated, right? So you still have to kind of think an extra layer beyond that. Be able to implement what's right for your firm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The other aspect of this that is particularly critical for law firms, I recently saw a study that said, and this was for 2024-25, cyber attacks on law firms have increased by something like 70%. Um, so you have uh, something that Sophie mentioned, which is the data privacy issue, but you have the particular issue of now we are using technology, being more efficient, storing data on the cloud, et cetera. And Sophie's correct that clients are asking, well, what are you doing to protect our data? And I'm not sure, at least with the law firms that I'm talking to, I'm not sure that they really have a great uh, understanding of that.
Yes, you're right. Also, uh, awareness is very important on the first stage, and how we structure this is the second stage, I would say. Yes, if you don't have any idea what you are doing or how to use AI in your internal business, you won't be able to make any structure or framework or guidance in your own company. So awareness is very important, and we should spread this knowledge and awareness in terms of AI.
Eric, is this something that is the cybersecurity side of it, something that your firm works on?
Yeah, I've been doing cybersecurity since it came out. I started working with a security company that we run the cameras and hang them up in the installation, right, to watch trucks coming in and out of the warehouse. Um, and that's always been an interest of mine because trying to make sure your data stays secure, stays where it's supposed to, someone else doesn't get to it. That's kind of what the computer's for. You're supposed to be able to pick it up, close the laptop, and no one can get to it, right? Um, so a lot of that has changed in that awareness. You need to go a step above and beyond. I think it's part of an attorney's duty for technological competence to be able to go, look, I know enough to say I need to bring in an outside expert to help me do an assessment and say, where am I on a maturity scale and where do I need to get to? Because you need that clearly defined path to say, how am I going to get there? And then establish a roadmap to get you there.
Right. I think that's what you just said is critical. And one of the things that I think is important for firms that are moving to AI or using AI and so forth is not only to have that roadmap, preferably with an external expert, but also to document it. Because if something does happen from a legal liability standpoint, you're liable to have to go back in and say, well, these are the steps we took to protect our clients' data.
Absolutely. That just having a policy, even if it's one page, a paragraph, is far more important than anything else. If you don't have that, you don't have that clearly articulated vision to be able to say, that's where I'm trying to get to. And then how am I going to take each incremental step to actually get myself and the firm where we need to be?
Right. And then it's a firm-wide process. I'm going to go back to something that we talked about earlier in the context of the technology and the need to train the internal users on it. There's also, if you have a policy, for example, that is, this is what we're doing for our data security effort, there's training that's required for the people in the firm on that as well. And one of the things, a law firm that I met with recently, one of the things I asked them is, how effective are just generally, are your internal training systems? And the answer, and this was from a managing partner, was, well, you really learn the law by doing it. Well, yeah, okay. But there's other stuff that needs training. Your internal processes, people that come into your company need to know how does information flow? How does work flow? What do we do about data security? What is the particular way that we use this technology? What are the guardrails we have? And so It's an area where I'm not sure law firms historically have done a lot in terms of, and I'm not talking about big law firms, I'm sure they have. But at the smaller and mid-sized law firms, I'm not sure they've done a lot of that. And this is an area where that could cause a problem.
Absolutely. I mean, law firms, most lawyers start to go practice law. They forget that along the way, establishing a firm, you have to run a business. And to be
Yes,
able to run a business, you need all those effective policies that say, here's how we're going to do things. This is how we're going to do new hires. This is how we do onboarding. This is how you get issued a computer. These are the things you're going to get access to. This is how often you have to change your password. These are the security
yes.
encryptions that we're going to use, right? And if you need help with any of that, you need to find an expert to help you out, right? It's not a burden you have to carry alone. There are plenty of folks who are able and willing to be able to guide you.
Absolutely. And I think that it's a great point, Eric. I think that is not only something you can do, I think that's something law firms should do because, like you mentioned, they're attorneys. They're not experts on a lot of this stuff. And so there's no point for them to go off in a conference room and sit down and try to figure out what this process will look like. They need to bring in somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, they just have to understand the touch points. How does it affect when I hand
Exactly.
something to my paralegal? Before she actually sends it out the door, she gives it back to me, I review it, I sign off, and now I can go out the door. They know the process, but they're not thinking about, okay, what are those touch points where that email went back and forth? Okay, did that really stay on my computer network, or am I using Google and it went up to Google servers and then back to my computer?
Right. Yeah.
Yes, and uh, today a partner, for example, or associate can review a document and understand who touched it, who drafted which section, and how certain language evolved. And with AI, we are entering a future where thousands of decisions, edits, and recommendations may be generated without a clear human memory or record of how we got there. And I think this creates a new kind of risk as well. Not the classic malpractice risk we are used to, but something more the absence of traceability. If an AI generated clause becomes disputed, for example, or a summary turns out to be incomplete, can we reconstruct the chain of reasoning? Do we know which prompts we are used to? And was the output reviewed or modified? So, without systematic audit trails, firms may inherit liabilities they cannot fully explain.
That's a
So,
great point, Sophie, which I hadn't really thought about. But I know when I'm using AI to work on documents, uh, everything that I send to AI and everything I get back, I copy all of that over to a Word document so that I can go back and see where did this come from. I'm not saying that's the most efficient way to do it, but that's how I do it. But I hadn't thought about the fact that that audit trail really isn't there if you're using AI. That's a good point. I'm not sure what the solution is, but
So it can be depending on the tools you're using and depending on the level of access you have within those tools. So most of the platform as a service tools will allow you administrative access. It will show you every single query that was sent in by a user. The thing is, it's not tied to they started working on document A and then it went to the next person. They continued to work on document A, right? And then where does it go from there? So they're still missing some pieces despite having a good audit log as to who asked what question and what the response was. It's not being tied back to what's the actual object that I was working on.
but Eric, when you talk about that in the administrator access, is that if they're using AI on a uh, in-house server?
So if you're doing it on an in-house server, your tech should absolutely have all of those
Yes,
logs, right?
I agree.
No, it's a platform as a service, right? So something like area.com, where they give you full access to be able to create your own workflows, be able to set up your own models, set up your own custom prompts, be able to fine tune everything, and then they keep all that logging for you. But again, it's not tied back to each document itself. I bet
Right.
there's a way to do that. That's kind of an interesting question on the technical side.
Well, but again, at least what I'm understanding, that's a service or a technology that wouldn't necessarily be applicable if you have a small law firm and say they have 10 partners and they're all using Chat GPT to do their from their computers in the
Mhm.
office to do their documents. They're not going to have that audit trail, are they? Or am I missing something?
Um, I don't think so, not at the 10 user. I think you have to be at an enterprise class in ChatGPT to get access to that, right? So they have it.
Yeah,
It's
that's my
just one of
point.
those hidden widgets.
Yeah, so what they would need is to, what was the name of that area?
Yeah, here, I'll drop it into the chat.
No, that's okay. But what I'm saying is that firm then really to have that traceability would need to get on that technology or something similar to it, and then explain to their attorneys, this is how this stuff needs to be handled so that we do have this traceability.
Right? And then you also get into the document retention question, right? How long do I need
Yes.
to preserve that? Right?
Yeah, great question. Which is a question that uh, law firms have to deal with anyway, but now we're talking about it in a different context.
Absolutely. But that knowledge is transferable for that one, right? If I have an established retention policy for specific types of documents, now you just have to find the right way to be able to implement in within your tool of choice,
Right.
right? Something like AWS S3 is your storage. They make it really simple. You set up the life cycle and the dates that you want things to expire, and you can either delete them or roll them over to slower storage.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Sophie. I had not thought about that.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
think that is a good point for discussion with when I'm talking to some of the law firm people that I'm talking to, because I have a hunch they haven't thought about it either.
Yes, and in terms of awareness, I would say that this kind of round tables is very important. And if this kind of people would be engaged in this kind of tables instead of, for example, large seminars, even a 15-minute team round table on one topic, how to use AI in drafting, would create cultural change much faster. And uh, and in 2026, the difference between good professionals and elite professionals will be their ability to integrate AI intelligently into their work. When teams see AI as an advantage, not a threat, awareness spreads naturally. So uh, it's not magic tool, it's a second brain with legal and operational implications. And when leaders understand how AI intersect with the risks, data retention, IP ownership, awareness becomes strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah, except that it's technical.
Eric, just a quick question. I know you do and have done work with governmental agencies. Uh, is is AI use in those, speaking globally, I'm not looking for information on any particular department, but is that pushed down from some top level agency? Is it handled generally within each separate branch of the government, or how's that done?
Yeah, so I believe that's all separate by agency, right? Each agency is going to set their own technological advancement. The DoD has a great one because they actually have an ethical AI group, and they've been working on really the audit trail behind the AI. How did it get to where it is, and what are all the pieces that went into it? But that's through CISA, and then there's a ethical use through the DoD, and it's just I think it's AI.mil, if I remember right. Um, but then every other agency is doing something a little different. And that has to come from the top down because they're the only ones who can authorize the use of a specific technology, right? Someone can request from the bottom up, but you're still going to have to get an approval from the top of the chain.
No, I understand that it has to be top down, but it seems inefficient that every agency's got its own approach. I guess it's not surprising, but doesn't seem like the most efficient approach.
I agree, but that's why we have really expensive hammers.
True.
Right? There's absolutely an opportunity there to be able to make that work better. They used to have some great things with like the public-private partnerships through groups like F5, who were able to take what are those technological advancements and then bring them into the government, show everyone how to be able to use them, get them trained up and established, and then let them go fly on their own.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's the only answer, but it's the one I've seen work very effectively in the past.
Yeah. Well, folks, I don't want to keep you here all afternoon. I appreciate you popping into this thing. Really appreciate your continuing to participate. We will be doing another one of these sessions next month. Next month, what I'm thinking of is changing the focus a little bit, and we've had two sessions now where we're talking about technology. What I want to focus on a little bit is the psychology of change management within the legal industry. Obviously, the legal industry, like everyone else, is going through a whole lot of changes. Sophie mentioned some of them in terms of the impacts of AI, whether that's within the US or between the US and Europe or whatever. Um, and what I'm seeing is that uh, there's sort of an embedded change resistance, which is not unusual. This is true in all organizations. But there's particularly in legal entities, there's a sort of an embedded change resistance, particularly in the smaller organizations and to some extent in the larger ones, of well, gee, I don't know if I want to try that because I don't know if it's going to work and so forth. So I've done some writing on that, and I'm thinking that I may incorporate that into our discussion for next time. Uh, but again, thank you both for being here, and appreciate your support. And have a great rest of your week.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for the opportunity to contribute. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I'm looking forward to the next session.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much. Talk to y'all soon.
All right.